Most people think the difference between earning $30,000 a year and earning $500,000 a year is just math. A bigger number, more zeros, more stuff. But that is not how it works, and anyone who has actually crossed those thresholds will tell you each salary level does not just change what you can buy, it changes how you think, how you sleep, how you make decisions, what you are afraid of, what you stop being afraid of, what your Sundays feel like versus your Mondays. Money does not just sit in an account, it restructures your entire daily experience of being alive. Today, we are going to walk through 5 salary levels: $30,000, $60,000, $100,000, $200,000, and $500,000 a year, and tell you exactly what life actually feels like at each one. Not what you theoretically can afford, what it actually feels like to wake up every day at that income level. Before we get into it, subscribe to Money Feed right now if you haven't already. We put out content every single week that breaks down how money actually works in real life. No recycled advice, no generic tips. Real numbers, real talk. Now let's go. First, the baseline. The median individual salary in the United States right now is approximately $62,600 a year, according to Bureau of Labor Statistics data from early 2026. The median household income, meaning all the earners in a home combined, is $83,730. So when we talk about $30,000 a year, we are not talking about extreme poverty. We are talking below median. When we talk about $60,000, we are right at the median. When we talk about $100,000, we are above average. And when we get to $200,000 and $500,000, we are in territory fewer than 10% of American households ever reach. And yet all 5 of these numbers represent real lives being lived by real people across this country right now. Let's talk about what those lives actually look like. Level 1, $30,000 a year. I do the math every single day. $30,000 a year. That is $2,500 a month before taxes. After federal income tax, payroll taxes for Social Security and Medicare, and depending on your state, state income tax, you are likely taking home somewhere between $1,950 and $2,100 per month. Let's be concrete. You bring home $2,050. The national average rent for a one-bedroom apartment in 2025 is approximately $1,500 a month. In lower-cost cities and rural areas, you might find something around $900 to $1,100. But if you're in a mid-size metro, anywhere with actual job density, $1,200 to $1,400 is the floor for anything livable and safe. Let's say you pay $1,100 because you found something decent in a mid-cost city. That leaves you $950 for everything else. Car insurance, $140. Gas, $80. Groceries, $300. Phone, $70. Utilities, $100. That is $690 in recurring monthly costs before you have paid for anything that gives your life texture. A dinner, a haircut, a doctor's visit not covered by insurance, a birthday gift for someone you love. You have $260 left per month. That is $65 per week for anything unplanned. And you do not have a car payment listed up there yet. If you financed a used car, which most people at this income level have to do to get to work, add $280 to $320 to that monthly obligation, which means the math no longer works without a roommate, a second job, or something giving somewhere. Here's what $30,000 actually feels like from the inside. You do not make financial decisions. You do financial triage. Every week is a sorting exercise. What absolutely has to be paid right now? What can wait 3 days? What can be minimized? It is not freedom, it is management. The cognitive load of that management is constant, persistent, and invisible to everyone around you. You become an expert at knowing exactly how much is in your account at any given moment, not because you're financially disciplined, but because you can't afford not to know. The notification that your balance dropped below a certain number is not an alert, it is a physical sensation. Restaurants are not social spaces at $30,000 a year. They're occasional decisions that require justification. You watch what your friends order and quietly calculate what the check is going to look like before the food arrives. Healthcare is a specific kind of stress at this level. You have insurance, maybe through your employer, maybe through the marketplace, but the deductible is $3,000 or $5,000. So you technically have insurance, but you also know that using it for anything real means a bill you can't pay in full, which goes to a payment plan, which has interest, which takes months to clear. So you postpone things. You wait to see if it gets better on its own. Most of the time it does, sometimes it doesn't, and the postponing made it worse. That is the math. The thing about $30,000 that is hardest to explain to someone who hasn't lived it: you are not failing, you are working, you are showing up, you are doing everything correctly by the external standard, and it's still not enough. That gap between effort and outcome is a specific kind of exhaustion that stays with you.
Level 2. $60,000 a year. I can breathe, but I can't really relax. $60,000 a year is the median. It is where most Americans are, or close to it, and it is a genuinely different experience from $30,000, not because the problems go away, but because the constant triage eases into something more manageable. Take home on $60,000, depending on state, is roughly $3,800 to $4,200 per month. Let's say $4,000. The same one-bedroom at $1,100 now represents 27.5% of your take-home instead of 53.6%. That difference, in percentage terms, is the difference between survival and function. Housing economists use 30% of gross income as the threshold for affordability. At $60,000, with $1,100 rent, you are comfortably inside that threshold. You can have a car payment. You can cover your groceries without calculation. You have a small emergency fund, maybe $2,000 to $4,000, that gives you the specific and underappreciated gift of being able to absorb a $600 car repair without catastrophe. You contribute something to a 401k, not a lot, but something. Here is what $60,000 feels like in daily life. The triage is gone, replaced by a lower-level awareness. Not panic, awareness. You know roughly where you stand. You check your account not from fear, but from habit. There is a margin, thin but real. You go to the restaurant with your friends and do not calculate before ordering, but you still look at the right side of the menu first. You still feel a version of that pull toward the cheaper option, not desperation, just trained instinct that does not disappear overnight. Vacation is possible at $60,000, not a week in Tuscany, but a long weekend somewhere you drove to, or a flight to see family, or a few days in a state park. Something. And that something matters more than it looks like from the outside. The ability to separate from work and routine, even briefly, is a genuine quality of life marker. The specific stress at $60,000 is a different flavor than at $30,000. It is not survival stress, it is progress stress. You are okay, but you are not building. Your net worth is moving slowly, if at all. One bad year, a medical event, a job loss, a relationship ending that changes your living situation could push you back toward the triage mode you escaped. The cushion is real, but not deep, and you feel the shallowness of it even when you cannot name it. $60,000 is also the level where lifestyle pressure starts arriving from the outside. Your friends are buying houses, getting married, having kids, upgrading their cars. The social current moves in an upward direction, and you are paddling to keep pace. Sometimes you do. Sometimes you take on a little debt to stay visible in the group. That debt is the leak at $60,000 that keeps a lot of people from ever reaching the next level. The most important financial fact about $60,000: the gap between what you earn and what you spend is narrow. Protecting that gap, keeping lifestyle from consuming every raise, is the entire game at this income level. The people who leave $60,000 behind are almost always the people who saved the difference instead of spending it. Level 3. $100,000 a year. I thought I would feel richer than this. $100,000 a year, 6 figures, the number that felt like an arrival point when you were making $40,000 and couldn't imagine it. And then you get there, and it's real, it's genuinely better, but it's also not what you pictured. Take home on $100,000 is roughly $5,800 to $6,200 per month, let's say $6,200. You can afford a good apartment or a mortgage in most non-coastal cities. You have a solid emergency fund. Your retirement contributions are meaningful. You are building net worth, slowly but visibly. You are not stressed about paying for dinner. And yet, at $100,000, taxes become a real presence for the first time. You have crossed into the 22% federal bracket on income above $47,150 and potentially the 24% bracket on income above $100,521 for single filers in 2026. Add state taxes, California takes over 9% above a certain threshold, New York nearly 7%, and you're looking at an effective tax rate that can approach 30 to 35% of your income. That means your $100,000 might feel like $65,000 to $70,000 in your account. This is the first time most people experience what is called the phantom salary. You earn $100,000, you do not spend $100,000. You never see $100,000. A third of it disappears before you can touch it. Here is what $100,000 actually feels like in daily life. You stop checking your account before small purchases. That reflex, the checking, the calculating, the quiet anxiety before the card is swiped, largely disappears. This is genuinely significant. The amount of mental bandwidth that frees up is larger than most people expect. You start to discover what you actually want. At lower income levels, most financial decisions are constrained by necessity. At $100,000, you have real choices, and it turns out that having real choices is its own psychological challenge. You have to figure out what you actually value, not what you would buy if you could, but what you would choose to buy when you can. Lifestyle creep is the enemy at $100,000 more than at any other level, because the income genuinely supports a more expensive life, and the social environment at this income level, the colleagues, the neighborhood, the friend group, often reflects spending patterns that can consume all of it. The $100,000 earner who drives a BMW on a lease, rents a luxury apartment, and eats at nice restaurants 3 times a week is often less financially secure than the $60,000 earner who drives a paid-off Honda, rents modestly, and puts 15% of their income into investments every month without exception. Research supports this directly. A national study found that to live comfortably as a single adult in the US, covering necessities, discretionary spending, and savings using the standard 50-30-20 budget rule, requires a pre-tax income of $106,745 on average nationally. $100,000 is almost exactly at that comfort threshold. You are not ahead, you are at the line.
Level 4, $200,000 a year. Something actually changed. Not what I expected, but something.
$200,000 a year. You are now in the top 10% of individual earners in the United States. At the household level, incomes above $200,000 represent fewer than 12% of American households. Take home on $200,000 after federal taxes at 32 to 35%, payroll taxes and state income tax is roughly $10,500 to $12,500 per month depending on your state. Let's say $11,500. The numbers at this level make the previous levels feel mathematically absurd. You have roughly the same fixed costs: rent or mortgage, car, groceries, phone, insurance, but now those costs represent 25 to 35% of your take-home instead of 60 to 80%. The gap between income and expenses is wide enough to actually build wealth at a meaningful pace. But here is what almost nobody tells you about $200,000 before you get there. The lifestyle migration happens automatically and invisibly. You do not decide to spend more, the spending finds you. The neighborhood you can afford is different. The restaurants your colleagues go to are different. The vacations that feel normal in your new social context are different. The childcare for the kids you now have the financial stability to have, if you have them, is $2,000 to $4,000 per month in most major metro areas. Private school starts making sense socially, and you find yourself doing the math on tuition that would have seemed surreal 5 years ago. What actually changes day to day at $200,000? The word no changes. You still say it, but the reason changes. At $30,000, you said no because you literally could not afford it. At $200,000, you say no because you decided not to. That distinction, the shift from inability to choice, is one of the most important psychological changes that income produces, and it comes with a version of freedom and a version of responsibility that lower income levels do not require. Your relationship with time shifts. You begin to genuinely feel that money is more available than time. At $30,000, you had time. You worked one job, you had evenings, you had weekends. At $200,000, you probably have multiple responsibilities stacking. The job that pays $200,000 is not a 40-hour-week job in most cases. It is longer, more demanding, more always on, and for the first time, you find yourself paying for things specifically to buy back time. You hire a cleaner. You order food instead of cooking. You pay for the direct flight instead of the connection. These are rational decisions at this income level. They are also a signal that something is being exchanged. Investing becomes serious at $200,000. You are maxing your 401k, $23,500 in 2026. You likely have a Roth IRA or a backdoor Roth. You have a taxable brokerage account. You're thinking about real estate. The investment decisions at this level are more complex than at lower levels, and the mistakes are more expensive. A 1% difference in investment fees or a poorly structured tax strategy at $200,000 in savings is worth tens of thousands of dollars over a decade. The specific stress at $200,000 is status anxiety, not survival anxiety, not progress anxiety, the stress of being in a social layer where everyone around you is doing well, and the signals of relative position, the car, the neighborhood, the vacation your kids attend, become louder than they were before. This is the level where many people, despite objectively good financial positions, report feeling financially anxious, not because they are in danger, because the peer context has expanded and the comparisons have become more expensive. Level 5, $500,000 a year. The problems didn't disappear, they just got more expensive. $500,000 a year puts you in the top 1% of American earners. To put that in perspective, the Social Security Administration's data shows that fewer than 1.5% of American workers earn above $400,000 annually. At $500,000, you are genuinely in rare air. Let's talk taxes first, because they are unavoidable at this level. A $500,000 earner in California is looking at a federal marginal rate of 37% on income above $609,350 for single filers, a 3.8% net investment income tax on investment income, California state tax approaching 13.3%, and payroll taxes on the first $168,600. Your effective total tax rate on $500,000 can approach 45 to 50% in high-tax states. Your take-home might be $250,000 to $280,000 per year, which sounds extraordinary because it is, but it is meaningfully less than half of the headline number. What does life actually feel like at $500,000 a year? The practical financial constraints of daily life have almost entirely been removed. Groceries, restaurants, gas, phone bills, none of them require any thought. None of them register. You do not notice when prices go up on ordinary things because ordinary things are a negligible fraction of your income. Travel is qualitatively different, not just more frequent, actually different. Business class or first class becomes the default because the price difference is small relative to income and you'll spend enough time in the air that the comfort is genuinely worth calculating. You book hotels based on where you want to stay, rather than where you can afford to stay. This sounds small. It does not feel small the first time you do it. Your children, if you have them, have a different starting line. This is one of the most significant effects of $500,000 income that does not get discussed in polite company. Tutors, sports programs, private schools, orthodontics without a second thought, summers with structure rather than summers with nothing. This compound advantage this provides, cognitively, socially, institutionally, is real and substantial, and does not get fully reflected in salary statistics. Here's the thing about $500,000 that genuinely surprises most people who get there. The basic emotions of life do not change. Anxiety is still present, it's just attached to different things. Relationships are still complicated. Money adds specific complications, actually, that lower incomes do not produce. The fear of losing it, the identity that has formed around this income level, can be more acute than the fear most people felt when they had less. The pressure to maintain is real. A $500,000 income is usually attached to a job with significant demands. The lifestyle built on $500,000 is expensive enough that losing the income would require material adjustments, not catastrophe, but real adjustment. And the gap between the life you have built and the life you could sustain without the income creates its own gravitational pull. It keeps you in the job. It makes the job harder to leave. It creates a gilded version of the same obligation that kept the $30,000 worker showing up every morning.
Research on happiness and income has consistently found that beyond a certain threshold, once basic needs and security are comfortably covered, additional income produces diminishing returns in day-to-day emotional well-being. The jump from $30,000 to $60,000 changes daily life dramatically. The jump from $200,000 to $500,000 changes it much less than the numbers suggest. What $500,000 does buy, genuinely and meaningfully, is options. The option to stop, the option to change, the option to take a risk with your career or your time that lower income levels cannot support. The freedom is real. It is just different from how it was imagined at $30,000. What every level has in common. Here is the thing that connects every salary level we just walked through. At every single one, $30,000, $60,000, $100,000, $200,000, $500,000, the gap between what people earn and what they spend determines almost everything, not the income itself. The $30,000 earner who saves $200 a month is building something. The $200,000 earner who spends $200,001 a month is not. Research from the Rich Habits Study, a 5-year analysis of 233 millionaires, found that 88% of them are self-made. They did not start at the top. They started somewhere on this list and moved upward through one mechanism more than any other. They consistently spent less than they earned, and they invested the difference over a very long time. That is not inspiration, that is a mechanism. And it works at every income level above $30,000 if there is any margin at all to work with. The salary is the input. The gap is the product, and the gap, compounded over time, is wealth. What to do right now? If you are at $30,000, the goal is not investing yet. The goal is stability. A $1,000 emergency fund changes the game on every unexpected cost. Get there first. Then look at what in the budget can produce even a $100 per month gap. If you are at $60,000, protect the gap aggressively. Every raise is a test. Does the lifestyle go up with the income, or does the gap go up? The people who get to $100,000 from here are almost always the ones who let the gap grow with every raise, instead of letting the spending absorb it. If you are at $100,000, taxes matter now. Learn the basics of what a Roth IRA is, what your 401k contribution limit is, and what your effective tax rate is. These are not optional things to get to eventually. They are live decisions that cost you money every year you ignore them. If you are at $200,000 or above, the complexity of your financial decisions now requires professional input. Find a fiduciary financial advisor, one who is legally required to put your interest first, not theirs. The fee pays for itself many times over at this income level. Subscribe if you haven't already. We go this deep every single week on MoneyFeed. Real numbers, real mechanisms, real life. Share this with someone at a different income level than you. It might help them understand something about where they are going. We'll see you in the next one.